So I'll introduce you, Dolores, and then we'll pass it over to her. Hi, isn't this a great moment? I just said to Dolores, I said, you were going to be in a room of historians, historic preservationists, people that have written essays about you, probably written books about you. And she's like, well, how long should I go on? And I was like, you can go on however long you want. She's like, well, until they fall asleep. Like, oh no, we're gonna be like this for days. There is no sleeping in this room. So thank you all for being so patient. We're gonna be pushing things back on the timeline. I'm sure y'all are okay with that. Dolores Huerta is one of the most influential labor activists of the 20th century. Co-founder of the United Farm Workers Association, Dolores Clara Fernandez Huerta is one of the most influential, especially when regarding Chicano civil rights movement. She is an advocate for the hardworking individuals, women, families, environment, the LGBTQIA community, and immigrants. In her lifetime, Dolores was arrested 22 times in nonviolent protests. Woo! So we were in the room together, and I said, I have to fact check this. Had you been arrested 22 times? And she said, in fact, she had. And a lot of the strikes, which got violent. So then the very last time I found out that she was arrested was just 5 years ago. Yeah, she is still out there fighting the fight, y'all. And I did want to read this part because we're talking so much about antepasados and healing, and talking so much about, nuestra mamás y abuelas. And on her bio, on the foundation, I found this, and I thought it's so relevant to the work that we're doing here during Congreso 2024. According to Dolores, her mother's independence and entrepreneurial spirit was one of the primary reasons she became a feminist. Dolores' mother, Alicia, was known for her kindness and compassion towards others. She offered rooms at affordable rates in her 70-room hotel, which she acquired after many years of hard work. Alicia welcomed low-wage workers in the hotel and often waived the fee for them altogether. So let's give a shout out to Alicia, the mom. Woo! She's doing incredible work too. So Dolores has been the recipient of many honors. She's received the Eleanor Roosevelt Human Rights Award in 1998 and the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2012. Today, Dolores is the president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation. She is still an activist, and she continues to fight for social justice and equal rights, particularly within agricultural communities. Without her tireless fight for racial, gender, labor, social justice, we would not be here today fighting for nuestra historia. Today, we honor Dolores, her tireless leadership, vision, and contributions. On behalf of Latinos and Heritage Conservation, we would like to gift you with these flowers as a thank you for all of your work. Please join me in welcoming Dolores Huerta to Congreso. So I will pass the mic over to Josie and then Cam, and then we're going to allow Dolores to speak for a bit, and then we're going to do some Q&A and then some group photos. Okay?
I'm not going to use the mic because I think you can hear me. I can project. Yeah? Yes. You hear me? Oh, we got a mic. Got a mic.
Josie, use the mic.
Well, let me just say on behalf of the Royal Chicano Air Force, I have a gift for you. Dolores Huerta is a mentor, as everything that was described, and I don't need to repeat all of that, but with the Royal Chicano Air Force, who were advocates, artists, a whole community of workers based in the Sacramento area, and Dolores has always been our mentor and guide. And on behalf of the RCAF, a piece of artwork, lapis from Stan Padilla, and it is a necklace. We'll open it up, and it is for clarity and goodwill and to keep anxiety away, and it's all lapis. This is Stan Padilla is one of the, there's not very many of the artists left. Jose Montoya, Esteban Villa, Armando Cid. A number of the artists have now passed away, and one of the few that's left, Rudy Collar and Stan Padilla, and this lapis piece is for Dolores from Stan Padilla. So, and I'll get that. Kim?
Thank you so very much for this beautiful gift. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Buenos días. Again, buenos días. Que viva Latinos in Heritage Conservation. We stay with that. Que viva. Learn that from Dolores. Always the que vivas, because we are alive and we're in motion. What can you say that hasn't been said about Dolores Huerta? Beyond starting as a teacher, a mother of 11, a co-founder of the United Farm Worker. She's the most famous, but also the most unknown civil rights and labor rights leader in the history of this country. But beyond that, beyond the historical contract negotiations that she did during the 60s and 70s, being radically inclusive, Dolores has taught me the true value of an intersectionality. And when someone says something about a community that isn't her own identity, she says, oh yeah, I'm African American. And just because to put people on the spot and say that it's not okay to talk that way about that particular community, it's true value of inclusivity, from race and ethnicity to queership to all of that. Dolores always stands up for everyone, and she talks about the strength of us working together more than anything. In 1993, she also became the first Latina to be inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. Of course, in 2012, the very famous statement from President Obama as he gave her the Medal of Freedom. Hey, y'all, by the way, that whole thing about yes, we can, that was Dolores' thing. Si se puede. So, oftentimes, men take the credit for women's work, but sometimes we as a society, the patriarchal society that we are, often will give someone else's credit to someone else because they're a man. So Dolores has been really great about that. Of course, she's continuing the work of cultivating the seeds of justice and civic engagement through the Dolores Huerta Foundation. Just a plug, if you have never given a donation to the Dolores Huerta Foundation, I highly encourage you to do that today. Lo que puedan. On a personal note, she's not just this amazing historical figure, she's also a mentor to so many of us. So many of us see Dolores as a mom, as a nana, as a mentor. But I think what's most beautiful about Dolores is that we are all Dolores Huerta in this room. Come on, let's hear it for that. Dolores taught me this wonderful, wonderful thing that one of her colleagues at the time, Angela Davis, said. There's going to be a whole lot of obstructions to the work that we want to do and need to do. But remember that walls turned sideways are bridges, right? So any wall that we can't get over, get under, get around, or go through, we just need to reappropriate that wall into something that is going to be useful to push our mission forward. I will close with the fact that beyond all of this, beyond the fact that if any of you have ever had a conversation with Dolores, she is a walking, talking encyclopedia of the movimiento. Not just campesinos, but everything. I mean, it's amazing all the stories that Dolores has. And it's always, to me, a tragedy that the National Park Service, as a community engagement coordinator for the National Park Service at Saguaro National Park, it's a tragedy that we don't have a monument after Dolores Huerta. We got murals, absolutely, gracias. But we need to move forward and look at landmark designation, and I encourage all of us to push that agenda forward. As it was said before, historic preservation isn't just buildings, it's people, it's our communities, heritage, and Dolores is a living, walking amount of heritage that we need to be able to secure, not just for ourselves, but for the kids and young people that come in behind us. All of this, and I'll close with the fact that Dolores isn't just this American icon, right? She's also a Cupid. I've been married, in November, I will be married for 18 years to this beautiful young Chilena, Montserrat Caballero, and the mother of our child, Julian Juarez Caballero. Both of those instances are in large part due to Dolores. We went to the mission like we did every time she was in Tucson. We would try to go to the mission together as a continuing of a tradition that Cesar and Richard Chavez both did. And we would go to the mission as a pilgrimage. And at that on that conversation, that first one that we had, I was telling her about this Chilena that I had recently gotten divorced, that was romantically interested in, pero no me pelaba. She wouldn't give me the time of day. And I said, I don't know, Dolores, what do you think? And she said, well, let's get her a regalito. You know, we'll buy her this beautiful cross. Come to find out years later that my wife is actually, ¿cómo se dice? She doesn't believe in that kind of structure, right? More so for feminist policy than anything else. But what she said is like, well, why don't you invite her to have lunch with us or dinner? And so I called her and I said, hey, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm washing my hair, right? And Dolores said, pásame el teléfono. And she's like, oh, you should join us for dinner and this and that. And Monse goes, who was that? And I was like, that was Dolores Huerta. And she's like, ah, you know. But it was because of Dolores that my wife gave me a shot, and you know, here we are married. So she's a Cupid también. And a lover of jazz. And of course, when we weren't able to conceive, I said, Dolores, you know, we've been trying, but she says, mijito, go back to the old ways. And I said, what's that? And she's like, you know, some of the señoras would put water under your bed and light a candle while you were trying to conceive, have sex. And and we tried it, and we got pregnant right after that. So that was Dolores carrying those tradiciones, you know. That was Dolores. So I'll close out with this very long introduction. I thank you for allowing me the time. Pero I'll close this out with what Dolores will unlikely do as well. Pero can we get a viva Dolores Huerta? Viva. Que vivan las mujeres. Que vivan la cultura. Que viva Latinos in Heritage Conservation. Señores y señoras y amiguex, Dolores Huerta.
Wow, what an introduction. No, thank you very much for having me. And I want to thank all of you for the great work that you're doing, because we know that our story, our Latino heritage, our Latino contributions are so crucial to the enlightenment of our country, of the United States of America, because our stories, you might say, not only are they important for the past, but they are important for the future, okay? Important for the future. You know, our story and what we are, what we have been, what we are contributing to the foundation of our country is so crucial, especially as we see that our numbers of our population is growing, right? You know, we know that if we fast forward, that we're going to be able to see that the Latino population of the United States of America is going to be, I'm going to call it the deciders, okay? We are going to be the deciders. We're going to be the deciders of what the future of the United States of America looks like. And so we have, I'm going to say, a huge responsibility. And not only that we know our own story, but also that we make sure that the rest of the country knows our own story, and especially that our descendants, our children, know the story, so that they will know not only what their place is going to be in our country, but also what the responsibilities are going to be in our country right now. But oftentimes when we see that our own history gets constantly erased or omitted or eliminated, then that's very hard for us to do. And so the work that you're doing is so important. So again, I want to thank you very much for all the work that you're doing. If there's in any way that, you know, my work and my life has been able to, or will be able to contribute to the history, of course, that's very, very important. I mean, like all of you, or like many of you, you know, we have all lived through a lot in the United States of America. You know, I'm actually 94 years old now, everybody. Woo. So I have a long history, but you know, my history actually, I say it predates my birth because, you know, I was born in the state of New Mexico. Any New Mexicans in the crowd here? All right, we got a few here. All right, yeah. And so, you know, our history in New Mexico kind of predates back, and just NBC, the network, did my ancestry, and found out that my family goes back. They traced it back to 1571 in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Okay, way back, 1571. That's 14 generations back there. You know, and found out that my 14th great grandmother was a Pueblo Indian. Yeah, so that was kind of cool to find that out. Okay, you know, it's kind of interesting because we hear a lot of talk these days about mixed race. Now with Kamala Harris running for president. And so there's a lot of talk about her mixed race, so to speak. But you know, actually, a lot of us of Latinos, we have been of so-called, and I'm gonna clarify that, quote unquote, mixed race for a long time, right? Between the indigenous and the Europeans, you know, that came to this country. And by the way, I do like to, when they talk, we hear all this talk about immigrants, right? And immigrants and immigrants and immigrants. I like to remind people, when we talk about the United States of America, the true immigrants are those that came from Europe, okay? Let's constantly remind people that our indigenous roots that we have, our Indian roots, you know, the indigenous people were the true residents that populated both the North American continent and the South American continent, okay? The true immigrants are like two of my great-grandparents, one of them who was from Spain, La Señora Baeza, who came from Spain, and then my other great-grandfather who came from England, Marshall St. John. Those are the true immigrants to the country, all right? And we have to constantly remind people that the indigenous people of the Americas, this is their land, okay? They're the ones that, you know, really populated this land, and they are the residents of the land, and they are not the immigrants. The people at the border that we keep referring to as immigrants are actually the indigenous people of the continents, right? So we have to constantly remind people because they do not know that, okay? They do not know that. The other thing I do have to mention is because so many of us Latinos have been subjected to the issue of racism that we have in our society. Because, you know, the one thing that we have been trying to conquer is the whole trying to do away with try to do away with the legacy that we have of slavery. You know, Martin Luther King Jr. said that slavery was an illness that we have in the United States of America. And the racism comes from slavery. And that's exactly where it comes from. All of the discrimination against people of color comes from slavery. And this is some of the things that we're trying to do away with. And I'm going to go back to what I said about mixed blood, so to speak. The one thing that all of us, and I want to ask everybody, please, to really think about making this a mission in your own life, you know, is to constantly educate people of the fact that we are actually only one, I'm going to say it again, only one human race, okay? Only one human race. And hopefully as our education improves in the United States of America, and we understand what science is, okay? You know, like Nacho Libre, you know, I believe in science, okay? What in science is that our human race is called Homo sapien. That's, I think, the scientific name for our human race. And that our human race came from where? Africa. Don't we all know that? Yeah, let's all say it all together. Africa. Yeah, this is where our human race came from. And if we can remember that that means that there's no such thing as mixed blood, because that means that we are all one human race, right? And we know that this is a big issue in our society. We see it right now in the division that we have in the political divisions. You know, the political division, although nobody wants to say it out loud, I guess some people do, that it's about white people against brown people, right? Or white people against black people. That's crazy. That is so ridiculous when you think about it. So we have to all of us constantly fight, and even within our own families, Latinos out there, we know that it exists, that colorism exists out there, and that somehow you're supposed to be better off if you marry somebody that's lighter skinned than you are. I mean, that's so ridiculous, you know, when we think about that. So we all have to bring that to the table, you know, to our dining room table, to conversations with friends and relatives, to say we have to get rid of this whole idea of racism and get rid of the idea of colorism. And one of the ways that I like to handle this is and I'm just going to ask you right now, you know, just remember that, number one, we're one human race. We all came from Africa, okay? So I'm going to ask you to take the hand of the person next to you. Take the hand of the person next to you. Turn to that person and say to them, "Hello, African relative." Yeah, and let's do that. Let's do that with our own families, okay? So we can start educating people on the idea that we are one human race, and then we can do away with the whole issue of racism once and for all, okay? Let's get rid of the racism. Just get rid of the racism. At least we can absolve us of that. And then, of course, we know that we have other issues that we also have to tackle in our own community. Issues like the whole issue of women's right to choose, okay? Women's right to abortion. Again, here, so we have a lot of the baggage from our religion that comes in here. Many of us are Catholics. Why do I have 11 kids? Because I'm a Catholic. Do my kids have 11 kids? No. No, they're not going to have 11 kids. Some of them have no kids. and this is, again, something that in our own community, we still have today, and I'm saying this because we do community organizing with our foundation, and, you know, we go into the communities, we bring people together, and yet we have some women that are offended when we say to them, yeah, a woman has a right to have an abortion if she so chooses. So for those of you that work out there in the community, yeah, we have to go out there, and I'm going to ask you to share with them the words of Benito Juárez. What did Benito Juárez say? El respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz. Respecting other people's rights is peace, okay? So that means if you want to have one kid or 11, that's your choice, right? Nobody else's choice but yours. The same thing applies if you decide to marry somebody of your own sex, you know, or live with somebody of your own sex, you know, that is your business and nobody else's business, okay? It's your business, nobody else's business. So I think that we have to kind of promote this so that we can kind of help our community deal with some of these issues, because there are people out there that they want to divide our community on these issues. They say Latinos were really good at addition, you know? We're kind of good at subtraction. We're not very good at division, okay? We're not very good at division, because from the very beginning, people have been able to come into our communities and divide us. And I don't know if some of you have heard some of the latest divisions that they're promoting in our community, and that is turning recent immigrants, turning long-time immigrants against recent immigrants. Have you heard this? Yeah. Or, okay, I've been an immigrant here for 20 years in the United States, and now you have these new immigrants coming in, and they're putting them up in nice hotels, and, you know, my family had to struggle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is done very deliberately. This is done very deliberately to keep our community from coming together, because we know that when we come together and we work together, we have a very strong voice, you know? We have very strong numbers, and especially in the Southwest, we have enough people that are going to be able, as I said before, decide things, decide election. But if they can keep us constantly divided, then that weakens our power and our strength as a community. So we have got to fight this stuff, but we've got to get out there, we've got to speak, and we shouldn't wait to be invited. We have to take whatever opportunity that you have to go out there and speak to the community about these issues that they are using to really make us a weaker community than a stronger community, and to weaken our power, to weaken our strength, weaken our representation, and keep us from taking the power that we should have, so that we can, make sure that we have a progressive country, and that we are in the forefront of making those progressive changes. So I know that your job is basically maybe one of preservation, but I think it's got to be more than preservation. It's got to be out there actually on the frontiers to make sure that things happen. But with the knowledge that you have, that you can actually help move us forward. It's not just about history. It's not about preserving history. It's about making history, okay? It's about making history. So I think that by all of us working together, and then also making people understand that we can have the semblance of power because of our numbers, but if we do not act on it, if we do not take that responsibility, and I don't know whether sometimes people are not sure that they have that power. One thing that we do in our grassroots organizing is, and this is the way that we organize the Farm Workers Union, this is the way that we organize with my foundation, is to tell poor people out there, you may not have a high school diploma. Cesar Chavez never went to high school. Cesar Chavez only went to the 8th grade, but Cesar was a genius. And we have ordinary people out there in our community. In the United Farm Workers, we set up all these training programs. And we had people that became auto mechanics. They became printers. They became accountants. They became lawyers, attorneys, okay? Without having to go to college. They did apprenticeship programs. And ordinary people, they may not have, a college diploma, but they could do all of these things, but they are given the opportunity. And so we have to make people understand that they have the power to do that. And then we have to try, of course, as much as possible to provide the opportunities for people and so they can learn these skills and learn these jobs, okay? But, our message simply to the people that we organize is, you know what? You have the power to change things in your community. You have the power. You don't have to wait for someone to come in and do it for you. You have the power to do it yourselves. And once they understand that, they say, I do? Yeah, you do. How do we do that? By just coming together, by working together, by taking action together, by getting people registered to vote, by getting people to vote, by getting people elected that will represent you. You have the power to make those changes. And when people learn that, oh my gosh. When I learned that, it was like finding the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, that ordinary people can make changes. And this is what we have to do, go out there to our community and let them know that. And of course, with all of the historical knowledge that you have, it will also give them kind of that background and that base that they need to know that they can make things happen. So I know that we can face a better world out there, but we know our community, the Latino community, has to be a big part of making that happen. So what do we say? ¿Se puede? Good. No, I don't know if people have questions out there that they would like to ask. Anything?
Question, Dolores, but I just want to inform everybody, if you don't know, University of California, Santa Cruz was granted your archives. And so that will be preserved at least at the University of California in Santa Cruz. So those of you who are archivists and are interested, her archives will be there.
Yeah, I wanted to give an example of a lawsuit that our foundation filed a few years ago against the current high school district in Bakersfield, California. You know, they talk about California being a very blue state, but anybody ever came to Bakersfield? Y'all know Kevin McCarthy's district, okay? Well, our current high school district had expelled, kicked out of school 2,500 students in 1 year. The majority of them were kids of color, okay? Black and brown kids. So we sued the high school district and we brought that number down from 2,500 expulsions. It is now less than 21. From 2,500 to 21. I wish I could say that the problem is entirely solved because we still are having problems with the black students. We have another area up there in our area up there in the Mojave Desert, California City, where 8 out of 10 black students are also being expelled or punished in some way in the school system. So the whole educational system is still working against our kids of color. And that is a really big issue because we know that education is the one way that we can preserve our democracy, because we all know that our democracy is under threat right now. You know, we have the president of California, the county supervisors of Fresno have just passed a resolution when they're going to start looking at the books in the library, okay? They want to look at the books in the library. So we have a big fight. At the same time that you are advancing the work that you're doing, you have these counter forces that are trying to suppress the knowledge and the education about our people. So in addition to the work that you're doing, we have an additional fight on our hands. It's just trying to keep the doors open so that our stories and our culture can be taught. There's supposed to be, as you all know, here in California, we're supposed to be teaching ethnic studies in all of the high schools. But some of the high school districts are dragging their feet and making it very difficult for that to happen. They want the ignorance to continue. Yeah, they want the hate and the racism and the prejudice to continue to keep our people down. So this is a big fight that we have ahead of us. And we know that if we do not preserve our educational system, we are going to actually go further into, we might say, I'm going to use the word fascism, because this is what we're talking about, the dictatorships. When they talk about Project 2025, and I don't know if you all have had a chance to look at that. If you haven't, please do look at it. It is very scary. This is Trump's agenda for the United States of America to turn the United States into a dictatorship like they have in Hungary, like they have in Russia, like they have in China right now. So this is all very scary. And we can think, we think, oh no, that could not happen in the United States of America. It can happen. We have had creeping fascism come into our country. And when we think of the word fascism, we think of Nazi Germany back in the 40s, and what happened during World War II, and we know how that ended with millions of people getting murdered by the Nazis. And we think that couldn't possibly happen here. It can happen here. It's creeping into our own country. The word fascism, by the word, comes from a word, I think it's an Italian word, that means to punish and to hurt. This is what fascism is, to punish and to hurt people. And we do not want that in our country, but it is here. And again, think about our educational system. And I don't know whether we have to go back to the Constitution, to the framers of the Constitution, to correct this. But when we think of our educational budget in the United States of America, okay, let's look at California. In California, our high school budget for California is smaller than the prison budget. Our high school budget is smaller than the prison budget, okay? The way that education is financed in our country right now, the Defense Department is the biggest budget that we have in the United States of America, okay? Our education budget is smaller than the defense budget. Again, if we're going to preserve democracy, if we're going to preserve all of the work and teach the work that you are doing, we have to increase our defense budget. So I don't know how we change that, but we have to change that. Our education budget has got to be bigger than the defense budget, right? You know, that's the way we stop wars, you know? Not just finance wars, but just stop wars. So these are like big picture things that we have to work on going on into the future. And because it does affect our community, because when it comes right down to our budgets for education at the state level, when it comes down to the school board level, you know, again, and then again, going back to the political part of it, the people that we elected school boards, you know, we have this big fight, as you all know, with charter schools, right? Yeah, with charter schools are taking money out of our educational system, and they are targeting our community to put those charter schools into our community, you know? And they're targeting the Latino community, and a lot of our Latino parents, they don't understand, especially immigrant parents, they don't understand that this is a threat to them and to their children, because they're not going to get the quality education that they need, and they're going to get a very skewed and education, and they're not going to have all of the knowledge that they need to have. So this kind of adds like another little, you might say, notch to the fights that we have to take on. But I know that our community is capable of taking all these different fights, and we have to prepare them for that, to let them know, understand what the dangers are, so that they do not get suckered in, and to support programs that are actually going to be harmful to them instead of beneficial to them. So we can add another little thing to the list of all of the things that we have to fight for, all right? I know we have a long list. We have a long list, but you can't, you can't fight hundreds of years of discrimination against our community with, you might say, like 3 or 4 little talking points and fighting points that we have to do ahead of us. So the one thing that we know, that we have a community that is very resilient, a community that is very strong, a community that is, I'm going to use the word tireless, okay? Porque no nos cansamos, no? No, we don't get tired and we don't give up. And the one thing that we do know is that by working together, as Cesar Chavez used to say, cuando estamos juntos, when we're all working together, we will win. We will win. Si se puede. Thank you. So I would like to ask everyone to maybe, you've been sitting down for quite a while. If you want to stand up for a second, and we'll do just a little chant together. Okay, ¿se puede? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to ask you all 2 questions, and I know you know the answers, okay, but wait for me for the answers, okay? The first question I'm going to ask you, who's got the power? I want you to say, we've got the power. And the second question is, what kind of power? And I want you to say Latino power, okay? But shout it really loud so the haters can hear us. Okay, so let's go. Who's got the power? We got the power. I think we can do better than that. Okay, one more time. Let's go. Who's got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? Latino power. Okay, are we going to use our Latino power to educate, to organize? What do we say? ¿Se puede? ¿Se puede? Sí se puede. Okay, let's do it all together with an organized hand clap. Let's go. Sí se puede. Let's go. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Thank you. Gracias. Thank you very much.
Love you, Dolores.
Love you too.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Yes, let's give a standing ovation for the one and only legend, La Mera Mera, Dolores Huerta. Thank you.